This is chapter 12.
Chapter 12.
Oh, I thought we were on 13. Okay.
All right. Let me just see. 13, I think, is no. How many more there to go? 13 is tomorrow, and then 13 is the last chapter of divorce. Okay. So, a lady comes to town, and she says, I was married, and I'm divorced now. Oh, did we do this yesterday? One second.
Yeah, I thought.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So it's 13. 13. Today's the last day. Your thing's right.
Yeah, but my thing. Oh, there it goes.
Sometimes, okay, yeah. A lady comes and she says to her husband, "You divorced me in front of these witnesses." So she said it to her husband. And witnesses come and they say, "That's not true." And afterwards, she goes with her husband, and there's peace, and then she says, "My husband died." She's not believed. So now she said, "My husband's died," and we know that she lied about divorce. So she's just trying to get away from her husband. So therefore, she's not believed. If someone comes, one witness comes and says, no, I know her husband, he died. Now, the thing is, in Judaism, you need two witnesses. You need two witnesses. That's the general rule of thumb. Now, why do you need two witnesses? Because if someone comes and testifies, you could testify against him. He's one against one, right? So one guy can never give proper testimony. Now, if he does, she can't get married. Maybe she paid him. Now, the rule of thumb is you can pay two witnesses. It's a lot harder to pay. Sorry, you can pay one witness, but whatever you could do with one witness is a lot harder with two. They have to make the story together. But if she gets married, she doesn't have to get divorced. So let's say she comes, says, "My husband died," after we know she lied once about divorce. She said, "My husband died," and now one witness says, "Yeah, I saw him dead." Now she wants to get married, and she's not allowed to get married. But if she got married, we don't force her to get divorced.
Why not?
Because there is one witness. It's possible she hired him, because we know she's unreliable. So maybe she hired him. But there is one witness, so she has one witness, so she's able to, okay. Similarly, if there's a war, world war, and she says, "My husband died in the war," she's not believed, even though there was peace between him and her, right? Even though we don't know of any animosity between them. Maybe she's saying he died because, yeah, a lot of people died. Maybe he's one of them. For example, the first ones, the last ones, and he was in the middle, and there she says, since all these guys died, he probably died as well. And therefore she's not believed, even if she says he died and they buried him. However, if she says he died on his bed, she's believed. Because if there's someone saw him die, so then that's somewhat of reliable. But if it's like, oh, in general, look, oh my gosh, all the troops died. If they say all the troops died and they buried them, we don't know for sure he died. Maybe he ran away. Okay. If there's no war, but she says there was a war in this place and he died in that war, she shouldn't get married. But if she gets married, she doesn't have to get divorced. Similarly, a lady says, "My husband died under a building that fell." She's not believed. And if there was a plague of snakes and scorpions, and a lot of people died, she says, "Oh yeah, he died from it." We don't trust her because maybe a lot of people died from it, and she's just assuming your husband is one of the casualties. If she says, I guess there was a fire or different things like that, and he died and I was saved, she's not believed. Just like she survived supernaturally, maybe he survived. If it was a time of famine, she says, "My husband died," she's not believed. If she says he died and we buried him, then she's believed. So, because what we're saying is she's giving more details, right? Okay. If she says, "The Gentiles attacked us, fell on us," or thieves, he died and I was saved, she's believed. Because it's very normal that the thieves or the enemies don't kill the women, but they just kill the men. So we say, hey, it makes sense.
Lately, though.
It depends who. Yeah.
I know.
If there's a plague and they say My husband died, she's believed. Because people know when there is plagues, people die. If it's possible, even strong, and when there's plagues like COVID, sometimes the strong people die and the strong people die, and the weak people live. That's the way it is. And therefore, we don't assume when there's a plague that she's saying like, oh well, everybody died, so maybe he died also. Already, we already said that a witness who hears from a witness can testify for a lady. When do we say this? That if a witness comes and he heard from a witness that saw that he died, then he's believed, and that's even from a slave or a slave. However, if they heard it from a child or from a demented person, they're not believed, and we just can't know if what they're saying is true. If they hear from a baby, they're saying, "We just came from the funeral of this person," right? Then you can use that as testimony, because you're not asking them directly. Like the child is just saying, "Oh yeah, we came for the funeral," and they give some details. A Jew that says, "I killed so and so," I killed him. She can get married, because a person typically will not want to. People do not say did a wrong thing. So if they said it, then they can use as testimony. We already said that if a Gentile, now typically a Gentile cannot be used as a witness, but if a Gentile is just talking and he says, "Oh, poor guy, I saw him die. He's a good friend of mine," right? In other words, we're not directly communicating with him. He's just talking, He says, "Oh yeah, so sad. I just came from the hospital. So and so died," whatever it is. So then he's believed. A Jew that hears from a Gentile, so you can take the Gentile's testimony and keep using it out. When do we say this? If there's no reason why he should say it. But if there's a reason why he should say it, a gain that he has, then we don't trust him. Okay, similarly, if they heard from non-Jewish soldiers or whatever it is, they said, "Oh, we killed so and so," they're not believed, because they're like Hamas. They're trying to put fear, right? They have a gain by saying they killed somebody. They're trying to show a threat, and therefore we can't trust them. A Gentile, which is talking regularly, even though they ask him afterwards and they check him, he's believed. So let's say we brought this rule. We said if someone's just talking in a regular talk, in other words, we didn't ask him, "Hey, did you see that guy?" And there's no gain. He just says, "Oh man, I came from the hospital. So sad to see that guy die." Now we ask him, and now he's answering direct questions. You can believe him because he started speaking earnestly. Okay. We already said that a witness that says, "I heard that so and so died," even if you heard it from a lady that heard it from a slave, this is kosher testimony for a lady. However, if the witness or the lady or the servant says, "So and so, I saw so and so die," we ask them questions, and I would say, "How do you know?" And if they are able to give proper testimony, then we believe them. But if they, if not, then we don't believe them. We don't believe them. So even though we said we can pass like through a broken telephone, kind of, we believe them. But if someone says they saw, then we check them and we, interview them and interrogate them to see if they're indeed telling the truth. For example, someone sees someone fall into the ocean, even if it's the big ocean and he drowned, he cannot say he died, because maybe the guy swam out somewhere else. And if he fell into water like a pit or whatever it is, and they wait and they don't see him come up for a long time, then they can say he died. Right? So if it's like a big ocean or river, Niagara Falls, maybe he survived. We don't know. But if it's like a small lake or a small body of water and you see the guy went under and he didn't come up, then you can say he's dead. If you see he fell into a bear's den or leopards, it's possible they didn't eat him, because animals don't always kill, they just kill when they're hungry. If he falls into a place with tons of snakes, or a furnace, or a pot boiling with water or oil, or or if he got really injured in a certain way that cuts off his air, and then you ran away, you can testify. He fell into there, he for sure died. And all these things, these are things that's impossible to live. So therefore you can say, you don't say like, oh, maybe a miracle happened. You say that he died. If you see him and a bird's eating him, even though he got like stabbed and a bird's eating him, so maybe he's dead. Maybe he's not dead. It's possible he's not dead. If you see him eating in a place, for example, his brain or something like that, or something that would kill him, then he's dead. A witness says that he died in a war, or in a building that fell, or he fell into water and drowned. And he says we buried him. He's believed, and you can bury. She can marry. But if he doesn't say that, if he doesn't say we buried him, you can't marry. And if she gets married, then she doesn't have to get divorced. Similarly, a lady that says, one witness comes and says, oh, I saw him drown in water which has no end. And he didn't come up. Okay, sorry. A witness that says that your husband drowned in water and he didn't come up and he forgot his memory and forgot his name, she cannot get married. And if she's married, she doesn't have to get divorced. Even if it's a Gentile who says, so-and-so drowned and she got married, she doesn't have to go out, even though we don't believe the Gentile. And a wise person who says to marry, that she can marry in the first place, we excommunicate him. If they find him dead or murdered, if his face is still intact and we can recognize him, then they can give testimony. But if one of those things are not intact, even though there are other signs, you cannot testify. Maybe it's someone else. When do we say this? You saw him within 3 days after he died. However, after 3 days, you can't give testimony because his face changes. He won't look the same anymore. Do a couple more and then we'll stop. I'll do one more. If he drowned in the sea and he was spat out by waves, came ashore, even after many days, if you recognize it, you could do that. Because in water, when people die in water, their appearance doesn't change that much. And if he's on the if he swells up on the shore, you can't give testimony because he changed. When you look in his face to recognize him, you look at the sea. You can look even in night with the flame. Okay, we'll stop here. We'll do the sea. Anyways, these are interesting laws. These laws can be quite relevant in times of war. In Gaza and the World Trade Center and things like that, where people are very much, hurt, and they can get very, very injured, and you can't really see what you can't really see you can't really identify them. So that's where a lot of these questions come from. Okay, so we are holding on page 665. We did this sikha the last 2 weeks, so we're quite advanced in it, and it's not a long one. It doesn't take so long. So it says in the verse, this is a very interesting verse, the end of Genesis. Very, very interesting verse, in my opinion. It says Jacob, so this is next week's parsha. Jacob gathers his sons together. He's about to die. He's very old, and he knows he's on his deathbed. So he gathers them and he blesses them. That's what the parsha is. The parsha is he gathers them, he blesses them, and he says a lot of future ominous, different details of the future, different events he alludes to. Okay, so this is what it says. Jacob gathers them and he says, gather and I will tell you what will happen at the end of days. Right? So that's pretty cool. He says, I will tell you what will happen at the end of days. So the midrash on that, and the Talmud says, and Rashi quotes it, he says he wanted to tell them when the end of days will be. When will Mashiach come? Maybe some more details also, how it will happen, when will be the end of days. Now, we haven't reached the end of days yet, right? So that would be pretty cool to know. Now, the next verse abruptly changes the subject, right? So again, he says, gather my sons. They gather. He wants to tell them the end of days. And then what happens is he abruptly stops. So the Midrash says, why did he stop? He wanted to tell them the secret time of the end of days, and God's presence left him. He was a prophet. God's presence left him, and he felt like, oh my gosh, if God's presence is leaving me, he doesn't want me to tell my children. Right? So that's what happens. And that's why in the Torah he says, gather, I'll tell you in the end of the days, and then the next verse just continues on with the blessings. So what exactly, this was our question, and there's a few questions we're going to answer in the Sikha here, but we're going to have to define what exactly is the meaning of the at the end of days. But I'm just going to go through it outside. We'll go through it outside just to catch up. So we said there for sure has to be a reason why he would tell them the end of days. So what would the reason be? And on the contrary, if he doesn't tell them the reason, right? If he tells them the reason, imagine he says, okay, in 4,000 years, Mashiach's going to come. How do you think his sons would feel? Would they be excited of practicing Judaism? They would say that's such a long time. Who even cares about it, right? So, and obviously Jacob is not trying to just spill the beans. He's obviously trying to, teach them something important. This is the end of his life. So what exactly what is the advantage of telling them the end of his days? Do you have any suggestions, David?
I don't know.
No? But you got the question? What would the advantage be?
Well, I guess if you knew the exact date, right?
Yeah.
So then everybody would just wait, I guess, until the Mashiach.
Well, we'd have to go into Egypt. We're in Egypt. We have to go into slavery. And then we'd have go into Israel. We'd have all the Canaanites. And then we'd have all the
People would start partying.
Philistines and the Moabites. And it would take years and years of suffering. And then we're in exile, suffering for thousands of years of the Roman exile. So what did he want? What was the advantage? So the Rebbe quotes some commentaries. They say, well, that's true for me and you. If we would know, it wouldn't be good for us. But his sons were very righteous. They wouldn't lose hope. They wouldn't lose focus. However, that in itself is also questionable. Even if they wouldn't lose focus, what is the advantage? Also, the Rebbe said, we want to explain. If you look in the Midrashim, there's different formation of how this Midrash is said. One of them says, Jacob was about to say it, and he felt God's presence leave him. Right? So he felt God's presence leave him, and so he said, okay, well, if God's presence left me, then obviously I'm not meant to say it. The other one says Jacob was about to say it, and God made him forget it. Right? So what exactly is the significance? Why would God make him forget it? Why wouldn't God just leave us, according to the opinion that says that he forgot it, why would he need to forget it? So why would Jacob need to forget it? So from everything that we said, must be, I'm just going through it outside, it must be that there is an advantage. We must know that Jacob has an advantage of saying it, right? He wants to say it, he has a purpose, but God says, and we know that Jacob is very holy, so he doesn't make a mistake. God says, even though you have a good reason to say it, even though you have a purpose of saying it, I don't want you to say it because I have another reason or I have additional factor that I don't want you to say it. You got that? So Jacob has a reason and God has a reason, and therefore God rules him out. And therefore, whatever reason God has, it must be, according to the opinion that he forgot it, God said, I don't want Jacob to know it either. And according to the reason the Shekhinah left him, that was enough for him not to reveal it. Okay. So now, that is the discussion that we have in the Sikha and the questions. Now we'll get to the answer. So this is something really interesting that a lot of people last week and the week before didn't know. In the Zohar, which is the famous Kabbalistic classic, one of the most fundamental Kabbalistic books, it says something really interesting. It said when the Jews left Egypt, the original intention was for them to go to get Sinai, receive the Torah, and then go straight to Israel. And Mashiach would come. And they would build a final temple in Jerusalem, and we would have been in Israel since then. What happens was, in the Torah we sinned, so God gave us 40 years in the desert, and then we sinned more. God said, no, Moses is not going to go into Israel, and we kept on messing things up. So basically what kept on happening is we kept on slowing down the cycle. So instead of going straight into Israel with the coming of Mashiach, We built the first temple was destroyed, we went into exile. Came back, the second temple was destroyed, went into exile for a very long time. And finally, when Mashiach comes, we'll build the third temple, and that third temple will finally be the everlasting temple. Right? So the Midrash says, really, at that point in time, Jacob would have told them, because at that point in time they hadn't sinned, he would have told them, we're going to go to Egypt for a couple hundred years, and then Mashiach is going to come. That's going to be the end of days. Because we didn't yet do the sins later on. The sins which caused us to go into exile and caused our temples to be temporary. So this is what Jacob wanted to tell them. He didn't want to tell them hey, in 4,000 years, Mashiach's going to come and you'll finally be redeemed. Finally, the Jewish people will be on their homeland happily. He wanted to tell them that hopefully, after the leaving of Egypt in a couple hundred years, you guys will behave, right? You guys will behave, and you will go straight to Israel. However, the Rebbe doesn't fully like this answer, so you understand how it answers our question. So it answers our question, what's the advantage? He's telling them, behave well, and you'll leave. After Egypt, you go straight to the coming of Mashiach. That'll be the end of days, right away. Don't mess it up, right? He's telling them, don't mess it up. Because at that time in history, God was planning on taking us straight into Israel. So the Rebbe actually says this is still difficult, because we knew we had to be in Israel for 400 years, in Egypt for 400 years. Now, in fact, it was shortened, right? It was shortened. Basically, God came to Abraham and said, "You will go to Egypt 400 years." And the Gemara says because the slavery was so difficult, qualitatively, God shortened it that we were in Egypt for 210 years. And the 400 years are calculated from the birth of Yosef. So therefore, this is what Jacob was telling his kids. He was telling them, if you guys behave really well, you'll get to leave Egypt early. Get to Egypt. Don't give up hope. Don't think that God calculated times that you have to be here for 400 years and therefore, ride it out. Realize that in fact, if you behave really, really well, you will be able to leave Egypt early. So that is where we stop. We'll stop here. That is where we stop. So what we've introduced here is actually the idea that there's a concept of times when Mashiach is meant to come at a certain time, but there's also a concept that we're able to bring it earlier, right? So that's what Jacob wanted to do. He wanted to tell them, this is the plan. So don't think you're going to be stuck in Egypt for such a long time. This is the plan. If you follow through this plan, you'll be able to bring Mashiach faster. And ultimately, we'll say God didn't want them to know that.
Okay, but then it didn't happen.
It didn't
right?
happen. It didn't
So
happen. Well, he didn't
now
tell
we
us
don't
that.
know for sure. We kind of know when the Mashiach is coming, right?